Another morning of waking up with full josh, ready to seize the day and crush my goals. Except I'm stuck in an endless sea of vehicles that form my city's signature trait, the waiting game.
I'm ஒரு டீ குடிச்சிட்டு வந்துடுறேன்.
I've been watching this scene for months now, but something about a car caught my attention recently and it really shook me. So it all started when my uncle decided to buy a Toyota Fortuner post he retired. It was his dream car, something he had wanted for decades. But it was when I saw the actual bill of the car, I realized the real cost of his dreams. You know, the manufacturing cost of this car is 31 lakh rupees, but guess how much he ended up paying? 57 lakh rupees. That is insane. That's way more than just a markup price. That's almost double. I wondered if it's just a Fortuner or if all cars are subject to such price hikes. Turns out, when you buy a car in India, 50% of what you pay goes straight to the government. And it's not just true for luxury vehicles, even the most basic family cars carry such enormous tax burden. As I dug further, what I discovered wasn't just about cars, it was about the complex, often invisible systems that shape our economies in ways we never see. This video is a fascinating story about cars, taxation, aspiration, about how economies regulate our consumption, and ultimately about the real cost of growth. Oh, and even traffic jams. To understand what is happening with car prices in India, we first need to understand how India drives. India is the world's most populous country, as we all know, with over 1.4 billion people. But car ownership here is still relatively low. That's just 34 cars per 1,000 people. Compare that to China with 231 cars, or the US, which has 850 cars per 1,000 people. But this number in India is growing fast and has nearly doubled in the last decade. In a city like Bangalore, in fact, we are adding a new private car approximately every 4 minutes. That is a lot of metal on roads that were mostly designed for two-wheelers and pedestrians. You know, when I first arrived in Bangalore around 17 years ago, I was very struck by the visual contradiction. There's basically so many new vehicles crammed onto infrastructure that wasn't ready for them. Roads meant for maybe 2 lanes of traffic, somehow accommodating 4. Parking spaces that don't exist, forcing cars onto sidewalks. But that's not the only contradiction. What's even more interesting is what Indians are buying, not just in Bangalore, but across India. You know, just 5 years ago, every second car sold here was a hatchback, small, practical city cars. But today, that's dropped to just 1 in 4. Meanwhile, SUV sales have exploded to more than 50% of the market. In a country with some of the most crowded, congested roads in the world, people are still buying bigger and bigger vehicles. So the question isn't just why cars cost so much in India, it's why these particular cars are selling so well despite the cost. And to answer that, we need to go back to something that happened in 2006. So, in the mid-2000s, India was trying to figure out how to balance multiple competing goals. That's growing its auto industry, reducing congestion, and of course, as always, raising revenue. Their solution was an ingenious, if somewhat arbitrary rule that would forever change the cars Indians drive. The government created a tax distinction based on the physical length of vehicles. So cars under 4 meters with engines under 1.2 liters for petrol, the tax burden could be as low as 29%. That's 28% GST plus 1% cess. But cross that 4-meter line and suddenly you're looking at up to 50% tax. The result? Car manufacturers began designing vehicles specifically for the Indian market that stopped just short of 4 meters. Look at all of these models, okay? They are exactly 3,995 millimeter. That's just 5 millimeters under the threshold. 5 millimeters. That's literally the width of what? A pencil eraser. This has created something very unique to India. That's the compact SUV. So these aren't just smaller versions of global models. They are meticulously re-engineered to fit under the arbitrary tax line while still giving the look and feel of a bigger vehicle. Now this 1 4-meter rule, it wasn't just a tax policy, it was a direct government intervention into the kinds of cars Indians would drive. And for a while, it worked as intended. It pushed manufacturers to create smaller, more city-friendly vehicles that still gave consumers what they wanted. But systems have a way of adapting. What happened next shows how market forces and human psychology can transform even the most carefully designed regulations. But before I get to that, I would like to thank our partner for this video that is helping businesses simplify finances. That's Odoo Expenses. Odoo is an all-in-one software that handles everything from point of sale to inventory management, helping you run your business smoothly. And now with their Expenses app, you would no longer have to scramble with large amounts of paperwork and drown in chaos. You and your team can simply snap photos of receipts on your phone, email them, or even manually upload it to the system. You can easily group multiple expenses under one group. The manager can approve everything with one click or ask for further clarification through chatter. And all the reimbursements sync seamlessly with your accounting system. What's cool is how seamlessly it handles the entire workflow from submission to approval to accounting integration. Even client-related expenses automatically get tagged for invoicing. And as your business grows, you can just add more features to match your needs. And the best part, by the way, your first Odoo app is free for life. So if you want to check out more, I am putting the link in the description below. Now back to the video. So despite the tax advantages of small cars, something very unexpected started happening. Indians, either way, started buying bigger and bigger vehicles. The shift to SUVs for many wasn't just a status statement, it was a practical response to India's realities. I mean, we all know Indian roads are not one consistent experience. In the span of a few kilometers, you might encounter smooth highways, crater-sized potholes, unexpected speed bumps, loose gravel, and sometimes even urban floods. So in a country where infrastructure is so unpredictable, ground clearance isn't really a luxury, it's a necessity. So an SUV with a higher clearance can navigate obstacles that would scrape the undercarriage of a sedan. So there's a term in economics called revealed preference. Basically the idea that people's true priorities are shown not by what they say, but by what they buy. And what Indians are buying says they value durability and adaptability over fuel efficiency or maneuverability. You know, there's also been a shift in how Indians think about safety. In 2018, the Tata Nexon became India's first car to receive a 5-star global NCAP safety rating. This was revolutionary in a market where safety features were often seen as optional extras. Suddenly, buyers started paying attention to things like crumple zones, airbag counts, and structural integrity. And which vehicles typically score better on these metrics? You guessed it, larger, heavier cars. But this is not all. There is something else happening too, something more emotional and harder to quantify. So if you look at all ads in India, cars aren't just sold as transportation, they are literally sold as an aspiration. They represent not just where you're going, but who you are and what you have achieved. The average price Indians are willing to pay for a car has jumped from around 50% in just 5 years, from 7.6 lakh in 2019 to 11.5 lakh in 2024. This, by the way, is far outpacing the income growth. Perhaps nothing illustrates this better than the sunroof phenomena. You see, in a tropical country where temperatures are usually high, where monsoons dump inches of rain, and where dust is a constant companion, sunroofs are actually very impractical. Yet if you look at the percentage of new cars sold with sunroofs, that has jumped from less than 7% 5 years ago to over 25% today. In models where it's optional, more than half of buyers choose the variant with the sunroof, often paying 50,000 to 60,000 extra for the feature. And by the way, it's not because Indians are regularly opening these sunroofs, it's because having one signals something about the owner that they can afford a car that has a sunroof. So, as you can see, we have these two forces colliding: tax policies pushing towards smaller cars and consumer preferences pulling towards larger, feature-rich vehicles. And in the middle of this tug-of-war is the Indian buyer stretching the budget to get the car they want rather than the car the tax system says they should have. But all of this brings us back to our original question. Why the hell do these cars cost so much? So let's break down the full cost of a car in India. Okay, let's take a popular SUV, the Mahindra XUV 700. Its ex-showroom price in Bangalore is 14.49 lakh. That's what you see on the price tag, right? Well, let me break it down. First, we have the manufacturing cost of the vehicle, onto which a nominal margin of roughly 5 to 8% is added. That gives you the ex-factory price of the vehicle. Add to that the showroom or dealer's margin of another 3 to 5%, a GST of 28%, the highest bracket reserved for luxury items, and finally a compensation cess of around 22%. And all of this is what gets you the ex-showroom price. And you'd think that's enough charges, no? Except you still need more to get the on-road price. Now on top of this comes the additional cost, that is road tax, which is 17% in Karnataka, which adds another couple of lakhs. By the way, this is not all. Here is where it gets even more interesting. You know that taxes on cars aren't just added, they're compounded. So the road tax that you just saw is not calculated just on the factory price, it's calculated on the price after GST and cess. That's basically tax on top of tax on top of tax. Then is insurance, which also includes 18% GST, by the way. After that, we have tax collected at source, which is 1% for cars over 10 lakh. Next, we have your registration fees, FASTag, and other charges. And if you add it all up, this is what you get. Not just the XUV 700, here I've got the bill for my uncle's Fortuner as well. Please have a look and see how it went from 31 lakhs to 57 lakhs. And we are still not done. We're still not accounting for the import duties on components that go into the car. So many parts from electronics to certain metals aren't manufactured in India and face import duties before they even reach the factory. Also, the tax story doesn't end when you drive off the lot. When you fuel up, around 50% of what you pay for petrol or diesel is excise duty and VAT. Getting your car serviced, that's another 18% GST on the service bill. Buying accessories, 28% GST again. So basically, you're paying tax on buying the car, tax on insuring it, tax on driving it, and tax on maintaining it. To give you a better perspective, look at the cost of the same Fortuner in Dubai. In Dubai, it would actually cost 39 lakhs. That's a huge difference from India. You know, at every turn, car ownership in India is taxed at rates that would be considered extreme in a lot of countries. The real question here is why? Why is it that India is taxing cars so heavily? I interrupt this segment to bring you some exciting news. Aevy has partnered with 100x engineers to bring you free masterclasses on applied AI. These sessions are perfect for founders, senior execs, developers, marketeers, product managers, and designers. You know, this space is evolving crazy fast, and we want to make sure you are not left behind. These sessions happen every weekend and cover topics ranging from AI filmmaking and ad creation, how to create AI team member using agents, LLMs for AI-assisted product management, and applied AI for non-technical people. 100x Engineers, by the way, is one of the fastest growing AI literacy companies in the world. You know, they've even designed and delivered Meta's official course on generative AI for marketeers, and now we are bringing the same access to all of you, so you are up to date as well. All you have to do is sign up and show up. It is absolutely free. I am putting the masterclass link in the description below. See you there. To understand these tax policies, we need to consider the government's perspective. So you see, India has the second largest road network in the world, spanning over 6.2 million kilometers. Maintaining this infrastructure is expensive, and road taxes are seemingly designed to help fund it. Then there's congestion. So India's major cities are among the most traffic-choked in the world. High car taxes theoretically discourage excessive vehicle ownership and push people toward public transportation. There's also the environmental angle. Private vehicles contribute significantly to India's air pollution crisis, which causes hundreds of thousands of premature deaths annually. But let's be very honest here, these noble purposes don't fully explain the scale of the taxation. The reality is kind of simpler. Cars are a very reliable revenue generator for the government. So in the fiscal year 22-23, automobile taxes contributed over 1.5 lakh crores to India's exchequer. That's about $18 billion, a significant portion of the government's tax revenue. It's what economists call an inelastic demand. People will keep buying cars even as the price rises, making them perfect taxation targets. What's particularly interesting is how this varies across India though. Each state sets its own road tax rates, creating significant price changes. For example, buying that same XUV 700 in Gujarat instead of Karnataka, and you might save nearly 1 lakh just in road tax. For luxury vehicles though, the situation is even more extreme. Import duties can reach 100% for fully imported cars, effectively doubling their price before any other taxes are applied. That's why a Mercedes could cost $60,000 in America but cost over $120,000 in India. The fascinating thing is though that despite these steep taxes, car sales continue to rise. The allure of a car ownership, the status, the convenience, the privacy outweighs these substantial financial barriers. So the question is, where does India go from here? How does a country with growing aspirations but limited space navigate its automotive future? One partial answer might be electrification. The Indian government has set ambitious targets for electric vehicle adoption and offers tax incentives that make EVs somewhat more affordable than their combustion counterparts. But even with these incentives, EVs still face the same fundamental space and congestion challenge as conventional vehicles. I guess the long-term solution likely involves rethinking mobility altogether. Cities like Delhi and Bangalore are expanding their metro systems. Bus rapid transit corridors are being developed in multiple cities. There's also growing recognition that cars may not be the most efficient way to move people in dense urban environments. But these cultural shifts take time. The aspiration to own a car, particularly a large, imposing one, remains deeply embedded in the Indian psyche. By 2030, India is projected to become the world's third largest automobile market. So the question isn't whether Indians will buy cars, it's what kind of cars they'll buy and how the government will manage the infrastructure and environmental changes that come with them. As I started this journey trying to understand why cars cost so much in India, what I actually found was a complex interplay of taxation, infrastructure limitations, aspiration, and market forces. The high taxes, they make sense from a government perspective. They generate revenue, discourage congestion, theoretically promote sustainability, but they also create real hardships for ordinary families trying to achieve mobility. My uncle, in fact, he waited years, not even years, I think he waited decades to buy his dream Fortuner. It wasn't just transportation for him, it was the culmination of a lifetime of work, a testament to what he had achieved. And I think that's true for many, many Indians. Cars aren't just appliances here, they are literal milestones. And that's why sometimes the value of something isn't in its price tag, it's in what it represents. And in India, a car represents something that taxes cannot diminish, the progress of a nation still on its way up, one vehicle at a time.